Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back, and today we're going to do One Piece chapter 1066 review. Let's get into it. So the title of this chapter, The Will of Ohara. So let's start off with the cover page, returning to Germa with company. So Caesar's pulled up with them at the Germa ship. So not much here, honestly. I think Oda is saving a lot for coming chapters, and that's why this one's kind of a bland cover page, because we're going to get some crazier drops in chapters coming in the future. And obviously this chapter was loaded with a bunch of facts, but I think he's saving a cover page drop along with some crazy stuff that actually happens in the chapter. Now let's get into the chapter where Shaka Vegapunk is basically explaining to the crew what happened during the Void Century. So Shaka Vegapunk was basically telling us that this machinery was all created during the Void Century and that the 20 nations defeated this advanced ancient kingdom. So it doesn't make quite much sense how these 20 nations defeated this advanced ancient kingdom if this ancient kingdom basically had tons of robot technology, they had a bunch of advanced technology. How would you fight against this, right? So did maybe these 20 nations come up with devil fruits? Was that their combative ability to fight this ancient kingdom? And maybe using devil fruits and leveraging devil fruits, they're able to take over. Or maybe I was also thinking is maybe they were using these ancient weapons, right? So maybe the ancient weapons were their leverage over this advanced kingdom and kind of beat out their technology, right? And something else that Vegapunk was mentioning is that even the higher ups don't actually have any knowledge of what actually happened during the Void Century and about the technology during that time. That clearly shows, I think, some of the incompetence that we've been seeing throughout the series in One Piece is that a lot of the soldiers that we see don't actually know what's been going on and don't know the reality of the world in this past 1,000 years. Basically they've just been following orders and they don't know what the truth is, right? So the world government is orchestrating their fabrication of the truth. They're basically stating that these archaeologists are liars, or whoever are liars, they're devils, right? We want to get rid of them and basically remove this information and any information about the Void Century, right? And any information relating to this ancient kingdom. Even though they're taking out the people, there's a lot of information leakage, and I think this is just shown in life in general, is that chaos is bound to happen, right? There's that classic part in Jurassic Park where Jeff Goldblum is like, yo, these dinosaurs are gonna escape anyway, right? These dinosaurs are gonna breed anyway, right? Because there's entropy in nature, right? There's entropy in nature and things are bound to fail. Things are bound to just stray into chaos, right? That's what chaos theory is everything is just bound to fail at some point. And so basically the world government has tried to hold this firm grip on the world for 1,000 years, and basically this is all culminated into just pieces of information leaking here and there, and they've been trying to just catch up and plug these holes, right? But their ship is sinking, dude. Their ship is sinking. The world government is falling apart. This is just the beginning of it. And now that Vegapunk is obviously going to tell the Straw Hats about all this information about Void Century, information about devil fruits, right? So now the Straw Hats are going to be equipped with this information, even though they're already searching for this information to a greater degree, right? Before, they've already had some pieces here and there. At least Robin has, right? Now that all the Straw Hats are going to know this knowledge, now it's really kind of setting them up to, take down the world government here. All of this has culminated into the world government being incompetent, but how incompetent are they, since they did keep quite a hold on all this information for so long that eventually everything's going to fail. Eventually everything's going to come to an end. And this is where, we can see it really, really coming to fruition. So Vegapunk continues to say that the will of Ohara lives on, since he actually visited Ohara after its destruction, and he ended up seeing that there was actually a crew of giants that recovered the books that the scholars threw into the lake on Ohara to save these books from burning down, right? So basically, these books got saved by the scholars. The world government didn't know the value of these books, at least the Marines didn't, right? So they might have seen these books, but they didn't see the value in it, and they just got left behind, and the giants ended up taking these books, and we found out our boy Saul is alive, and it was awesome to see Robin just like break down in tears. We haven't seen Robin in tears in a long time, and it really just felt really rewarding and kind of a great feeling to see that she actually has someone to connect to from her past, whereas everyone else on the crew has had sort of someone to connect to, and Robin really hasn't had that person. So that was really cool to see that, you know, now she has someone to, you know, recollect on the past with. And Robin also goes on to mention that the scholars at O'Hara actually figured out the same thing that Vegapunk did, right? So all of this technology and about the Void Century and about the Ancient Kingdom, the O'Harans must have figured out the same information that Vegapunk did based on all of these books and things like this. And so that's why they got taken out by the world government, and that's why Vegapunk was basically predicting his own death, because of the fact that he figured out this information and kind of just saw the trail of breadcrumbs, like, yo, everyone who figures out information about this basically gets taken out, right? They just get taken out. After this conversation, we basically get a flashback to when Vegapunk actually visited O'Hara, and we get our boy Dragon pulling up on Vegapunk, and he's just like, yo, dude, your head really makes you stand out, man. You got a big freaking head, right? He's got a big head. And something cool about Dragon's design is that he was wearing a bandana around his leg to basically show that he was a freedom fighter. And at this time, Dragon was actually the head of the freedom fighters, so he didn't create the Revolutionary Army yet. He found out that the island got destroyed, so he was just there to pay respects. Back to Dragon's insignia, he actually has that on his face now, and it was kind of cool to see that, you know, Dragon kind of embraced the freedom fighting, you know, fully, and now he just is a freedom fighter by heart, right? He has this stuff tattooed on his face, right? And so we also get dialogue between Dragon and Vegapunk, and Dragon was basically mad how Vegapunk never ended up joining the freedom fighters, and Vegapunk basically responds like, yo, dude, you didn't have any resources for me. I'm only useful if I can actually build things, right? That's why Vegapunk ended up joining the world government, is because he had tons of resources there. And even with the world government, with technically like unlimited resources, Vegapunk can only do so much, right? So he hasn't been able to mass produce a lot of his technology. He's just been able to kind of create the initial prototypes for a lot of things, right? So even with world government backing, you know, he doesn't have infinite funds for the crazy amount of stuff he could do. And Dragon clearly states here is that kind of after this event, after O'Hara got taken out, and after obviously a good friend of theirs, Professor Clover, got taken out, so Dragon's like, yo, I'm gonna create an army to face the world government head on, and he says he'll change the world. And so apparently just a year later, he recruited Kuma and Ivankov right away to kind of go against the world government, and he created the Revolutionary Army, right? So this was kind of the initial creation of the Revolutionary Army, kind of based after this event, and seems like Dragon was very, very determined at this point. And it was interesting to see that Sanji didn't know that Ivankov was a part of the Revolutionary Army. That was pretty funny. So Sanji really pays attention, so I was surprised that, you know, he didn't know this piece of information. And so then Shaka continues, and he basically states that he actually ended up visiting Elbaf to start reading these books, and the giants let him read these books, and he actually memorized all the books in his brain, right? So he has all this information in his brain. I don't know if he's gonna tell all this information to the Straw Hats right now, or basically he's just gonna tell the Straw Hats, yo, go to Elbaf and, you know, find out for yourself, you know? So then we move to the junkyard on Egghead, and out of nowhere, the real Vegapunk, finally his real body pops up. Basically like half of his body was inside of the robot thing and half of it was out. Looks like he used some kind of teleportation ability. So I wonder if the Straw Hats are going to be able to use this teleportation ability and just like teleport around to different islands, and maybe you have to visit that island at some point so that you know where that island actually is, and then you can teleport to it. Yeah, so I want to learn more about this ability. Hopefully the Straw Hats pick this up in some way. So as Vegapunk is stuck, Luffy pulls him out, and Vegapunk's like, oh, you're Dragon's son, I expected you to come, right? So I wonder how Vegapunk knew that Luffy was going to pull up to Egghead, right? So that's like a huge leap. Obviously Vegapunk knows everything, so maybe he was able to kind of infer that Luffy would arrive there eventually. And Bonnie is just pissed at Vegapunk. She's like, oh, here you are, Vegapunk. Finally, you know, finally we meet. I'm pissed. Like, and she doesn't get to say anything because right away, Vegapunk just seems to be floating, and Luffy and Chopper are like, oh my God, like, how are you floating like this? And he shows them, yo, you just need to push this knob on your shoes and you can start floating and flying, right? They basically end up taking off, and it was cool to just see Vegapunk's design. It was clearly based off of Einstein, and a lot of people were saying the apple was a reference to Newton, Isaac Newton, right? So the two science goats, basically, right? Everyone knows those two. And yeah, it's cool to see Oda's perception of who the smartest man in the world would look like in the One Piece world. So Vegapunk keeps saying, save us Quasar, save me Quasar. And basically a Quasar is a massive and extremely remote celestial body, right? So does Vegapunk know something greater about the world of One Piece? Because the only other things we've seen being referenced in terms of like gods are actual like people being referenced as gods, right? As we've seen in One Piece is like, oh, there's other people referenced as God, like the sun god Nika, right? The forest god, right? We've seen other gods being referenced, you know, God Enel, right? So I wonder if Vegapunk knows something like, okay, did, you know, the world of One Piece originate from some far away place, right? Some quasar far away, right? Some celestial body. Maybe there's another planet where, you know, all of the people in the One Piece world originated from, right? So maybe they basically took those people from that world, dropped them off here in the One Piece world, and that's why there are people populating the One Piece world. Maybe that's why there was robots, you know, and other aliens on the moon. We saw other aliens and space pirates on the moon, right? So it's totally possible that, you know, all of the life in the One Piece world originated from somewhere else. And basically Vegapunk is implying that, you know, the greater God, right? The greater God is like just another celestial body where we originated from, right? Or maybe those beings created the One Piece world, right? So there's so many questions there on why he uses the term quasar, and I just, you know, just had a bunch of questions about it. But yeah, that's basically all I got for this chapter. Let me know what you guys thought in the comments down below. I thought this was an amazing chapter. I'm so hyped to see what happens next. Hopefully we learn some Devil Fruit information soon. Hopefully we'll learn more about the Void Century and stuff like this. We clearly will be, so I'm super hyped for it. That's all I got, and talk to you guys later. Peace.